We don't need a second United States. We need China with its characteristics to inspire, not to impose, to stimulate, not to sanction, to gather, not to exclude. China is looking for the might of the right, the might of diplomacy and not the might of military. And it's meaningless to win a war if you cannot win peace.
Mr. Severin, welcome to Diplomacy Talk. It's an honor to have you here.
It is my pleasure to be with you today.
My first question is, how many times have you been to China and what feels new or different on this trip?
Well, it's hard to say how many times because I didn't count them. My first visit in China took place in 1990. The developments in China were amazing, and amazing is an understatement. Indeed impressive, and what is also impressive is the fact that this development, this progress, is due basically to genuine Chinese efforts and Chinese thinking. I would say that many achievements were made possible against the opposition of others, of foreign actors. So the rise of China was not applauded and supported by everybody in this world. And this was a reason for which I was even more impressed about what I saw here. I saw the important cultural sites in China. I was in many other places. China is, somebody said, is a continent, some others said it's a planet. I would say it's a universe. Certainly it's difficult in a lifetime to know and understand the universe, but I think that few parts of this Chinese universe I have met and I have appreciated. And I say I appreciate this fantastic development.
You have served as both Romania's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. Looking back, what experiences or moments most shaped the way you think about diplomacy?
As a matter of principle, I think that any country has two armies. It's a classical military army, and it's the army of the diplomats. And if the military army is really in action only during wars, the diplomatic army is in action all time, including and maybe especially during the war. My interaction with the Chinese policymakers and with the Chinese diplomats was very enriching and very inspiring. I believe that the diplomatic army is more important than the military army. Certainly you are able to develop, and you should develop, a military army. Everybody is doing that. And certainly the last resort of any diplomatic endeavor is the military one. But this is a last resort, not the first resort. In the Chinese approach of the international relations, China is looking for the might of the right, the might of diplomacy and not the might of military. This is extremely important. To me, it's also important for your internal development because, the most of your efforts are directed towards the economic and social development. It's also important for the international relations. Unfortunately, today what we see is that there are countries which are able to win all wars, but they cannot win peace. And it's meaningless to win a war if you cannot win peace. Indeed, it is also true that some would like to see the endless wars. And this is because they do not look for a new order, but they look for selling the weapons and enriching the military industrial complexes. And maybe for dividing the world in order to rule it better, to control it better. But for me, war is a means which should be used as little as possible. This is China's approach. This inspired me and encouraged me to go same way. It was my approach as well, always.
You have called Central and Eastern Europe a bridge between East and West. How do you see Romania helping to build better understanding and stronger cooperation between the two?
Romania is a good bridge, good gate, and a good anchor, if you want, and a good interpreter of the West for Eastern understanding and the Eastern messages for the Western understandings. The best anchor for the Chinese ship in the European big harbor. Certainly, we understand much better the Eastern philosophies, the Eastern mentalities, than some other Westerners. And probably we understand better also the Western mentalities than the people coming from the Far East, to say so. So we could indeed facilitate the understanding, and this is very important.
China and Romania have had diplomatic ties for 76 years, with trade exceeding $10 billion for the past 4 years. So, what do you think has kept these economic ties strong despite global challenges?
First of all, I think any sustainable policy, it's pushed ahead not by choice but by necessity. In Romania, we have a deep or the high respect for China, and we consider that among the major global actors, China was always on Romania's side, always friendly to Romania, always even more than friendly sometimes, helpful to Romania. China was able to undertake risks in the international relations in order to support Romania when Romania was in trouble or under threat. So Romanians noted that and remember that. And this could indeed explain why, in spite of the difficulties which are created by the international context, the relations are growing. Romania, I mean, it's a member of the European Union. It's also a member of North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. We have, of course, to align our policies to the policies with the other members of the European Union and with our allies. To my mind and to my taste, we are aligning it too much. I think that we are full-fledged members of these bodies, and we have the full right to say no. It's not compulsory to say always yes. We are not subject of others. We are partners of the others, and certainly as equal partners, we should say, okay, there are a few things which are unacceptable for us, or they are compulsory for us. In a way or in another way, I'm happy to tell you that we made, at least at the level of the words, this clarification. For instance, we said, look, China is our objective strategic partner, and there are limits in our alignment with your policies when it's about China. From this point of view, we can support some other policies, some other plans, but nothing which would harm China. We want China to be more involved in developing the infrastructures in Romania. We want very much China to cooperate in IT field. We certainly are interested in the development of projects within or linked to the Belt and Road Initiative under this name or without mentioning this title. The European Union, which does not understand that if it wants to be meaningful in this world, if it wants to raise at the level of a global player, it has to develop and to achieve a very comprehensive, very deep, and very broad strategic partnership with China. Again, my answer is there is no other possibility but to choose China. Of course, politicians somewhere are giving wrong answers to the right questions, but the history would push them in the right direction. These wrong answers are temporary, as the guys who give these answers are also temporary, and we should not be discouraged by them. They think they have to rule the world and to isolate the world. Instead, they are self-isolating.
How do you see Central and Eastern European countries handling the China-US relationship?
We are more or less treated as a second-hand Europeans. And even in relations with China, there is some kind of a discrimination at the level of the European Union, because states like Germany or France, have no problem if they want to develop the dialogue with China, to come in China and talk. But on the other hand, the European Commission advised in the strongest terms not to develop direct relations with China, but to develop them only through the European institutions, where our interests regarding the relations with China are basically ignored. The European Union does not treat us fairly. It does not allow us to develop on our own relations, which could compensate the lack of development which we expected from the European Union. It is a fight, believe me, it is a fight between our interest and the directives, the orders coming from Brussels. These orders are synthesizing the interest of the different Western capitals in the European Union. And well, we have to fight this. We have to fight this this battle, and I'm sure that will be successful in the end. But for the time being, these are slowing down our capacity to integrate the offers and the programs we have agreed and developed with China. But these programs, nobody, neither China nor us, should give up. I repeat it, neither China nor us. China should not say, okay, it's difficult, it's impossible, let's forget about it, let's try something else. No, China is able to try many things without dropping this relation, which is necessary for everybody and which will prevail in the end. The geostrategic game is basically changed now after the disappearance of the Soviet Union and after the rise of China and rise of other powers like India, for instance, and powers in Africa and some other Asiatic powers, after Turkey is willing to regain its strategic autonomy and so on. So there are other places in the world where United States thinks that they have more interest to spend energies and money rather than in Europe. Europe does not have much to offer now to United States, and therefore the United States are contemplating the possibility to leave alone European Union. Certainly, they don't want to leave behind a strong power. So, therefore, even in this war with Russia in Ukraine, it was in fact a war against the European Union as well. And the European Union was put in the knees, economically at least, by being pushed into this war. On the other hand, Europe doesn't find any appealing offer from the United States. Until recently, it was the nuclear umbrella. But it's less and less probable that the United States would extend or would offer or will keep this umbrella to guarantee the European security. To my mind, the European security is not so much threatened. The only thing we have plenty is our debts. And I'm not sure that anybody will come to conquer us for taking our debts or to attack us for taking our debts. Otherwise, we have very little to offer as Europeans. As I said, the Americans have very little to offer to the Europeans. They are not keen to keep assuring our security, military security. The energy security they are offering us is extremely expensive and is ruining our economies. What else could they offer? From the point of view of technological progress, I think there are many other better offers in the world. Generally speaking, to the whole world, America could offer now only to sell weapons for making wars which are not the wars of the buyers. So we buy weapons to fight wars which are not ours. What else could they offer? The great American industries are in China. I'm afraid that the head of Mr. Trump, on which it is written, "Make America Great Again," which means that he accepts that America is not any longer great. Otherwise, he would have said, "Keep America great." But no, he wants, and he's right, to want the greatness of America to be back because it is lost. But that head, that very head, I am almost sure that it is made in China. The American debts are huge. They could offer just, the possibility to buy these debts and in the end to reduce their values by playing with the dollar. The influence of the dollar is going to be less and less real. If they are going to freeze or even to confiscate Russian deposits in their banks, this would be give again a terrible blow to the credibility of its financial market. Together with the American dreams, Hollywood economy, American army, dollar was the important weapon for assuring the supremacy of United States in the world. The dollar is not any longer the real support for international economic health, but on the contrary, undermining the international economic health. The American dream is not appealing anymore. We have different dreams, and that one faded away. So what rests? Only the army, but I said the army was unable to win the peace. I have to mention it, some might misunderstand me. I'm not an anti-American. I think that it would be bad if America would simply collapse and would be kept out of the process of a new world order building. For the time being, they are sanctioning and isolating everybody. In fact, the more they are sanctioning and isolating the so-called bad ones, they remain alone on the axis of good. So, in fact, they are not the global majority, but they are becoming a global minority. And this is not good for them, not good for anybody. I hope that they will understand that. It's another historical moment, and they have to play the game of this time, forgetting what was the past. The past is over, and the future is now, of course, with Asia, with Asiatic countries, and I would say mainly with China.
While visiting China's Guizhou province, you mentioned that bridges are not only technological masterpieces, but also bonds connecting humanity. So my question is, how do you think Belt and Road projects can boost both Romania's economy and people-to-people ties?
Absolutely, and I think that there is, a spiritual, a cultural belt and road. Routes and bridges will not circulate only the merchandises, goods or services or capitals. It will circulate the ideas. It will circulate the feelings, if you circulate the cultures. And this is extremely good. We will be certainly keeping our identities, but at the same time we'll be able to evaluate our identities better by comparing with the others and by understanding not that we are superior and inferior, but by understanding that we can take inspiration from the others. And we can live together by being different, but also by understanding better each other. So every bridge you build here in China would make you closer to the other countries. And every bridge you build outside of China would put us in contact from the spiritual point of view. And this is very important. When I understand you better, I don't hate you. Even if I dislike something, if you understand me better, even you dislike some of my habits, you don't hate me and you try to relate with me in a compassionate way.
You have mentioned that Chinese cultural values converge to form a new vision to build a better world. So, which aspects of Chinese culture do you think have most influenced its path to modernization? And how might they inspire a new vision for the world?
The civilization is still alive, the Chinese one. So it's again your time for inspiring the world order in accordance with your cultural traditions. Your cultural tradition includes the concepts of harmony, of solidarity, of compassion, of communitarian development, which we can see. You are building bridges, not only cars in United States and also in UK. They are building weapons and not hospitals. So for how long those who are building mostly weapons without building hospitals could survive and could dominate the world? Not forever. It's the time for this model, which I very much respect and admire. It's more than it's respect and admiration at the same time. And I think it is necessary for our world. We are an unbalanced world, unequal world, uncompassionate world, and peaceful world. We have to develop a different order, even if the masters of the old world, the so-called Pax Americana, American peace, are unhappy. And I can understand that they are unhappy. It's always good to be number one, but it's sometimes also good to be one of the group equal amongst the others. The first amongst the equal. So we are all first, but without thinking that we must be first by dominating the others. We could be first by inspiring the others. We cannot be first by sanctioning the others, but by helping the others, by stimulating the others. I've been always in favor of stimulus rather than sanction. If you behave in a way which I don't like, I can give you incentives to behave differently, but not to sanction you for not behaving in accordance with my desire. I think this is a completely different way of thinking. This is the inspirational contribution of the Chinese culture in building a new world order.
On September the 1st, Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed the Global Governance Initiative on the SCO Plus meeting in Tianjin. So, how do you see this initiative helping to tackle today's global challenges?
Now we have the fourth initiative, after Initiative for Global Development, Initiative for Global Security, Initiative for Global Civilization, and now is the fourth one, Initiative for Global Governance, which to my mind was a logical complement for the others. We cannot have a new order without a vision. To the best of my knowledge, China is the only country who provided a vision. And the others have some ideas, of course. We are criticizing the old order from different points of view. We have some suggestion for plumbing here and there, the old order, but we don't have a vision. A new order cannot be implemented without people, and you need educated, aware people. And in China and many other places, all over the world, in fact, but mainly in the global south, we have already a huge number of educated people who could understand this vision, develop it, and implement it. And certainly it could not last, this vision, without institutions. And to my mind, this initiative of global governance is precisely about institutions. We built up the Trade World Organization, and now everywhere we see new barriers against trade. IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the International Bank for Development, do they bring development anywhere? On the contrary, they are controlled by those who do not produce any longer the biggest part of the global national product. But now things are dramatically changed. China produces more, the BRICS country produce more than the G7. And G7 still thinks they have to guide the world and to control the International Financial Organization. Not to say that this financial organization transforms themselves from, let's say, global organization into a global oligarchies. They are a super state oligarchy trying to rule things for the sake of a small group of powerful actors and not for the whole world. So everything should be either reformed or replaced. If they cannot be reformed, they should be replaced with something else. Organization like Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a beginning of a new institutional piece of a new world order. The BRICS is an institutional piece of the new world order. They are at the beginning. It's a process, but it's very important to understand what does not function any longer in the present order and what we should, let's say, change.
So, what kind of role will the Global South play in the improved old order of the world?
We all have to get rid of some prejudices. The West suffers of a complex of superiority, and therefore we have to teach the others. The global South suffered, at least until recently, and in some of its parts still suffers of a complex of inferiority. Now, in the global South should understand that it's time not to contribute only, but to take the lead. And also, when speaking about China particularly, I think that China should take the lead in its own manner, not in the American manner. I always said we don't need a second United States. We need China with its characteristics to inspire, not to impose, to stimulate, not to sanction, to gather, not to exclude. These are, I believe, Chinese characteristics which are not something which was invented today. It's something which was built along many centuries, even millenaries.
As Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Romania, you often engaged with Chinese officials. Have you noticed any changes in how China approaches diplomacy now compared with then?
I think that China always has its own kind of diplomacy. You have a certain elegance in your international behavior. I remember that I was invited personally in Belgium when President Xi Jinping came to Europe. soon after he became head of the Chinese state, for an absolutely excellent speech he made. It was a marvelous speech he made at the beginning of his presidency. And I was extremely happy to be invited and to listen that speech and to be one of the very first to have the inputs from your president. And starting from that point, I followed his gesture, his decision, his policies, his speeches, and I could understand something which is also very important, the coherence of his vision.
What are your overall impressions of China, the Chinese people, and its leadership?
One could be only impressed by what Chinese people was able to achieve. I am impressed of this link existing between the Chinese leaders and the Chinese people. It is not very well understood in the West. And we do not want to acknowledge that differences do not mean that the others are inferior, but maybe simply are different. We should never forget that China is a huge territory. You cannot manage such a country as you manage a country of a few millions of people and few tens of square kilometers. One cannot have the same relations between leadership and the people as here. It is a very interesting link between respect for the leader and the obligation of the leader to assure the equality of the people. The leader has an obligation to protect you and to provide the environment for all of you to feel equal and to live an equal quality of life.
It's a great pleasure having you on Diplomacy Talk, and thank you for your insights.
Mostly welcome.